Hi, and welcome to the Dingers podcast. I'm your host, Mitch. Dingers is proudly part of the ChiCitySports.com podcasting network. Remember, we are free and available wherever you download your favorite podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is at Chi City Sports, where you can get extra Dinger videos and content at Chi City Sports YouTube channel, as well as join the conversation. Find us on Twitter at Dinger Cubs. We love interacting with you, our listeners, and Cubs fans. Well, will there be baseball? Tonight could decide a lot if we are going to miss baseball games this year, as the owners decided that this would be the deadline to see if we were going to miss the first month of the season. If a deal does not get done tonight, they say that we're going to miss the first month of the season. We are on day 90 of the lockout, 42 of which the owners took to get a negotiation back to the players to start this whole labor talks out. So, guys, it's been tough. This week has been kind of a ride of emotions. And if you're anything like me, you might need a little beer to get you through these tough times. And tomorrow you might need to get some ready in the fridge tonight, because tomorrow you might want to drink a beer, because you'll know that we might be missing some baseball games. And if you're going to be drinking some beer, why not get some Toppling Goliath, some of the best beer in the state of Iowa. I'm having a Cherry Fandango tonight. Quite tasty. So go get yourself some Toppling Goliath beer. But yeah, this week has felt like a kind of a ride of emotions. I think I started Monday out feeling pretty optimistic that a deal would get done. I said by Friday. Well, it's now Monday and we still do not have a deal. So you've kind of been going from optimistic to downright now depressed, and especially with yesterday, the news coming out that it didn't go well. The labor talks have not gone well. They're really far apart on a lot of big issues, and rightfully so. The players need to be standing up, and with everything that's come out with all the financials from the Atlanta Braves, and just knowing what the minor leaguers are getting paid, which we'll dive into with our guest tonight, that there's a lot to hammer out. There's a lot that's at stake for not only baseball this season, but for baseball in the future. And that's what the players are fighting for. They're fighting for that. And so hopefully, yeah, we hammer out a deal tonight. They're still working on a deal later even now tonight, which is great. But hopefully they hammer out a deal. We want to see baseball. I want to see baseball, but I get why they're fighting. But the owners, man, they've taken quite a beating this week from our boys, Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal. The media they've kind of lost the media. And that's kind of one thing I think that would affect the owners is how they're perceived, especially Rob Manfred. He wants to be seen as a good commissioner, and he's not. And so if he could get a deal, that could probably help him in how he's viewed in the media. But something I was thinking about today is all these, the MLB, they have contracts, owners have contracts with different distributors to be able to get onto TV, right? And I bet you these networks are not happy that MLB could be missing games. And so I think that could affect, if they could get some leverage there, the players could use broadcast networks as leverage to push, like, hey, we don't want to miss games because we're going to be missing out on money. So hopefully the owners feel pressure from them, as the broadcast companies could be losing money. But you know what will not get affected by this lockout? Minor league baseball. So go get your MiLB subscription, TV subscription, and watch yourself some Iowa Cubs this offseason. It's $9.99 for a year to be able to watch all minor league baseball content. Go get yourself a minor league baseball TV subscription. I'm going to be doing that so I can watch Iowa Cubs, South Bend, Tennessee, the Pelicans, watching all this minor league, because guys, our minor league teams are loaded. We got some major talent, and it's going to be fun to watch them play. And for us, being that we're close to Des Moines here in Iowa. We're going to be, if we're going to miss some games with the Chicago Cubs, if we won't see games past May or June, we're going to be fully invested in providing you content for the Iowa Cubs. We will be bringing you every Brennan Davis dinger that he hits. We will be bringing you interviews with Iowa Cubs players. We'll be fully invested in trying to provide content, baseball content, and Iowa Cubs content, which those guys are just on the cusp of making it to the major leagues. And there's some pretty good talent down there. I think Caleb Killian is going to be one of the pitchers there. They got Brennan Davis. You got some big name guys that are going to be fun to watch with the Iowa Cubs. But we will be also providing content as well as all the other minor league affiliates along the way. Which brings me to tonight. Tonight we have two amazing guests on. We have Alex Cohen, the broadcaster of the Iowa Cubs, and Max Thoma, the broadcaster of the South Bend Cubs. We had a great conversation around just how they got into broadcasting, as well as a little bit of labor talks, technology within baseball, and just a little preview of what players might be playing for these teams and get a little preview of the season. So I'm excited to allow you to kind of see this interview I recorded a couple days ago with Max Thoma and Alex Cohen. And I'm joined with Max Thoma, the broadcaster of the South Bend Cubs, and Alex Cohen, the broadcaster of the Iowa Cubs. Welcome to the Dingers podcast, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's going to be a joy. I'm excited.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back. It's good to be back and talk baseball. Last time we talked, it was a little bit warmer and a little bit more positive, but now we're trying to get back on the right track.
Yeah. So welcome back, Alex. This is the second time on the Dingers podcast. So welcome back to the show. Let's start with Max, since you haven't been on the show. Give us a little background of what led you to South Bend and becoming a broadcaster for the South Bend Cubs.
Well, if you want to go back a little bit further, I grew up about 25 minutes north of Wrigley. I grew up in Winnetka, Illinois. Went to New Trier High School. I went to the U for college, broadcast there for 4 years, and then did some indie ball. Found my way to South Bend. Sadly, actually, I think my first day was February 26th of 2020, which, if memory serves you guys right, it was not a good time to be starting a job anywhere, let alone in minor league baseball. I worked at the stadium for 2 weeks, and then, we wound up having no season. But, so it's nice. I'm only a couple hours outside of Chicago, where most of my, my friends are, where I grew up. That's kind of how I got to South Bend. But I worked for the student radio for 4 years in college, doing a lot of football, a lot of baseball, a lot of basketball. Went to the College World Series in 2016, which was a blast. We were 0-2. We were, I think, the second team eliminated just because we were, schedule-wise, we couldn't be the first, which was nice. Yeah. But that was a blast. We were the only student radio there, which was cool. I had some great memories there. And, it's been fun. South Bend's been a blast so far, and we're looking forward to April 8th and getting back out there.
And Alex, we've heard your kind of story, but I wanted to get in, ask you, how was it this year to be on Marquee Sports Network alongside Lisa Menaker broadcasting?
It was great for me. I don't know about the watchers who had to see the face.
No, you did awesome.
No, I mean, it was just fun. First of all, working with Elise, she's a pro. She's somebody who was a college Hall of Famer at Cornell. She knows the game. And sometimes when you get people who know the game, they know that they know it. They go on air. They talk about it. There's not gonna say there's no research, but there is a built-in excuse to go through the motions. She is the opposite of that. She is by far the most prepared broadcaster, play-by-play, color, sideline I've ever seen. This is somebody who comes to the ballpark 1 p.m., has conversation after conversation with her notepad and her cell phone, and as she comes up, she's meticulous about her prep. So just being able to work with somebody like that, it brings the most out of a broadcast, and it made me a better broadcaster. And just being able to do it, on Marquee Sports Network after 2020, not having a season, 2021, our first home game was on Marquee Sports Network. So throw us right to the fire.
Yeah.
But we really enjoyed it, and we got great feedback, and we got people chiming in from Indiana and Colorado and all throughout Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin, people who were listening to have that type of reach with an Iowa Cubs broadcast. It was a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it this year.
Yeah. You did awesome. I enjoyed tuning in when I wasn't at Principal Park watching the game being able to at least watch it on Marquee Sports
it.
Network.
I'll be Venmoing you for the compliment.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up wanting to be a broadcaster. I dreamed of being Harry Carey and Steve Stone, being in that press box right alongside them. Thought about going into broadcasting, but ended up becoming a teacher instead. So next best thing is to start a podcast and have that be that way. But did you guys ever growing up dream of a big moment, of being able to broadcast a big moment like a World Series? What was like your guys' like team or moment that you dreamed of broadcasting? I remember wanting to broadcast and do a play with Ryan Sandberg in the play. Like, what was your guys's?
Mine was actually like a bad moment for my team. It was 1993, which is before Max was born, and Mitch, you were probably in college. It's when the Phillies lost the World Series, and Joe Carter hit the grand slam home run, and I just remember the broadcast, them painting the picture, not just the home run, but the quiet of the broadcaster, letting the crowd and the pure emotion coming from the Toronto stadium and the fans freaking out. I don't think there was a sound after the ball hit the bat for a minute and a half. They just let the crowd carry the energy. I'm like, man, that's setting the stage. And I was 5 years old and crying after, but that's when I just remember how big a broadcast was to the game presentation. But also, growing up, listening to the Phillies and Harry Kalas in 2008 when they won the World Series, and hearing, Harry Kalas say the world champions of baseball, it just etched in my brain. So just a combination of that.
It's also amazing just because, one of the hardest things as a young broadcaster, especially doing games on TV, is letting moments breathe. And obviously there's no bigger moment in sports than the last play of a game winning the game, let alone that play being the World Series. And to hold back when you're young and just let the moment breathe, let the viewers and listeners take in the atmosphere and the noise from the crowd, is so special. But man, it is really tough to do that young in your career because you're just so antsy, especially when you get a big moment. You haven't had many, and you just try to jump in and kind of ace that moment.
Yeah.
But I would say, it's funny because growing up, we all I picture myself in my gym, or sorry, in my driveway, taking the last shot of a game, because you're always ending the game, right? I always pictured myself as a kid winning the national title for my Wisconsin Badgers. It's always a corner three, which is funny because I have always been a just terrible shooter. And I'm 5'8", so obviously I wasn't good at basketball. I couldn't shoot, and I'm small. But I grew up. It's always fun to talk about. I grew up a Cleveland, then Indians fan, now Guardians fan. So I grew up with Tom Hamilton in my household because my mom is a huge Indians fan. That was the voice of baseball for my childhood. So when I think about the biggest moments, I always think about, when the Indians clinch the playoffs, Cleveland, you will have an October to remember. But, most importantly, when Carlos Santana catches that ball in foul territory against the Blue Jays in 2016 to get to the World Series, and it's, you will have a World Series to remember. And then, I don't remember what happened in the World Series. You guys might have some kind
about
of
blowing
memory.
a 3-1 lead.
You must have been conflicted, growing up on the north side of the Chicago suburbs during that World Series. Were you in college at that point, or?
Yes. And the funny thing is, and all my friends at home would agree with this, I'm like the antagonist for everything, because my mom is a diehard baseball fan, really just exclusively baseball fan, though, from Cleveland. So I grew up an Indians fan. My dad is from Milwaukee, so not a big baseball fan. He's become a more of a Brewers fan, but I'm a huge Packers fan. So I've had great years living in Chicago as a Packers fan with all my Bears fans friends, and the Indians and Cubs never conflicted ever. And then 2016, it just hits that climax. So yeah, it was not a fun time to be me. I was actually at one World Series game in Cleveland, and it was game 2 when we got smoked. So, but yeah, it's interesting. There's you can imagine how many, signs and posters there are at any Cubs minor league affiliate of the 2016 championship, celebration on the field. And, I just switched desks 2 weeks ago. My boss kind of turned one towards me and moved it off another wall because they want to make sure I always remember that stuff.
Yeah. Well, Max, we'll stick with you. Have you had a call? I know you've had a kind of a short kind of career so far, but have you had a call that's kind of stuck out in your career so far that's like, this is one that I remember? This has been either a fun call or one that's kind of stuck out to you, like, yeah, this call was something I'll remember, and it's been a great call.
Fun one last year. I was really wanting someone to hit a home run that hit the Tiki Hut, which is our big bar beyond the left field wall. The bar itself is a little over 400 feet away, but to hit the roof of it where the bamboo is and where it says Tiki Hut, it's probably 430 plus. And Nelson Velasquez hit it last year. And I had always thought about calling it a Tiki tank, and I don't like to, premeditate any calls, but I got out, a Tiki tank from Nelson Velasquez and then kind of let it breathe for a good amount. And then as he's rounding third, I said, and Nelson Velasquez says, bartender, order me up a 3-run shot, which I thought really kind of worked well. I was kind of pumped about it because it's funny when you ask someone, especially who's like young, your best call. I can think of a million bad ones. Yeah. There's moments that were botched that were, I don't even know if the call was bad. It was just maybe even inaccurate. But that was a fun one. I really enjoyed when we had Alexander Canario at first, and he was just homering in every single game. I got out a Light Tower Power one when he had just hit a moonshot in South Bend that I really liked. But that Tiki Tank one stuck out from last year.
What about the one in the Ferris wheel?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up.
That's the one that I'm thinking.
So it's funny because the scenario. I'm just recording social media content on my phone. Is really the goal here. I'm obviously not plugged into anything. And I only got to do it because I had a broadcast partner in Quad Cities that week, which I hadn't really had on the road before. So I basically asked their GM if I could go up there. I was up there for 20 minutes. I don't know why I went up there when we were in the field. There was no good moment to call from the Ferris wheel when your team's on defense. I could barely tell who was hitting because I wasn't facing the scoreboard. But the call there was pretty bad just because I barely know anything that's happening. I'm dizzy. It's really windy. I realized 2 weeks after that, I went to the optometrist and got glasses. So I couldn't even really see that well the whole season. But it was just the raw excitement, I guess, was what people were attracted to in that video. There was a lot of fun, and it was Washer's second home run of the season, so it was a fun moment in that season finale.
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I remember that one. Seeing that on social media, I was like, "What are the odds of that happening?" That is awesome.
And I was only up there when we had 5. We got a leadoff single, and I'm like, okay, we might score a run when I'm up here. That's all I want. Next batter, double play, and then we got the home run, and I was pumped.
Yeah. What about you, Alex? You got a call?
That's tough. There's 2 that stick out for me from last year, from 2021. I think the first one definitely was Brendan Davis homering in his first AAA at bat, and then Brendan Davis homering in his second AAA at bat.
Yeah, I remember those highlights.
Really, he set the bar high. And I think the other one, or the other situation, was Patrick Wisdom when he came to Iowa. He started off 0 for 14. And then he went on a stretch where he hit 3 home runs in 2 games, one of them a game-winning grand slam. It wasn't a walk-off, but it was the first time in like 620 days that I heard a crowd roar. So just hearing Wisdom hit a grand slam over the center field wall, like 440 feet of Principal Park, and the crowd going nuts. The hair of my arms was sticking up. It was just like, holy crap, we're finally back. And it was that moment that kind of push that forward to me. So those are 2 that stick out.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, Brendan's that was just amazing when he got to you guys and just started homering at will. Go if you want to talk bad calls, if you can happen to find a replay of Brendan Davis's first home run of the season. It was my first game. And my friend Minor League Baseball retweeted the video because it's Brennan hitting a home run and it's his first of the season after getting hit in the head in spring training. But my friend sent me in the video. He's like, yeah, the audio glitched out for a second there at the beginning. It sounds awkward. I'm like, oh, there was no glitch. There was no glitch.
I actually think I heard it. I didn't think it was bad. I think you commented like I butchered the home run call. And I'm like, it's a fine call. I mean,
I actually remember being very relieved that you said that. And I was like, so Alex is apparently very nice. Because
it was like, If you thought that was a bad call, man, I go back to 2012 with the Huntsville Stars. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs with a Philadelphia accent, just butchering home run calls, trying to make up like a home run, like signature call, just them falling.
Oh, yeah. Forcing something people don't realize can be, just so detrimental. I remember in college, college is a great time to like try out things. And I wanted to try, I know we're getting off tangent a little bit, but
no, you're good.
To just try out things that I had heard from announcers that I really liked or just even grew up with. So, like, I grew up watching, Matt Underwood as the Indians TV guy, and I really like him because I grew up with him. I don't think he's one of the best TV guys, but he's out of room, it's out of here is one of, as opposed to it's gone to Souvenir City. Those are kind of the two big ones he does. And I tried he's out of room, it's out of here in a Miami game, and it was like, wow, does not work for Max Thoma. Jesus, did not come out well. And then like separately, I know I'm talking for a while. I remember hearing an interview with Bob Uecker when they were like, how did you come up with get up, get out of here, gone? And he was saying, when I was a player, that's what we would yell in the dugout. Yeah. We'd be yelling, get up, get out of here. He's like, so it just worked. And I'm like, I'm trying to think of my playing days in high school. And I'm like, wow, what were we yelling? And whenever we had a big dude hit a bomb, we would just always yell, oh, get off me, ball. I tried that once and it didn't work either. And I still think there's a place for that somewhere, but I'm going to try it out in 2023 or 20.
Alex, maybe you should give it a shot.
I'll try it out and send you guys a video and see if it works or not.
We'll see. I think my first year, one of the home runs happened, and I went, oh, yeah, and it made me sound like the Kool-Aid man. Oh, no. And then I did it like a couple more times just for fun. I'm like, God, this sounds awful.
So as the ball's hit, you're like, oh, yeah. And as you're watching the replay, you're like, oh, no.
Yeah. It was like he hit the home run. I'm like, oh, yeah. Like Hunter Morris, 15th home run of the year. Oh, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, no. Oh.
Yeah. And there's nothing worse than when you get a moment wrong. Yeah. And sometimes it's funny because if your vantage point changes drastically from like one game to another, you might just mess up like the level of which you're seeing the game from. In college, I was lucky enough. We had an exhibition game versus the Marlins, which a lot of pro teams, I think, sometimes do still play their local colleges. I know the Red Sox a lot of times play BU. And all of a sudden, the press box is like infinitely higher than it is on a college campus. And I just could not tell how far balls were hit to the outfield. I'd never been that high before trying to call something, let alone, you're calling MLB players all of a sudden, not guys who are 18 and 19 years old. And they were just, I was like, that ball's hammered. And it's like, the left fielder is moving in, you idiot. Like,
it's weird. Actually, this year I had I don't know if it was 2 games in a row, but it was 2 games the same weekend where I called a play as a home run. One was hit by like Jacob Olsen, would have been his first AAA home run, and it hit the top of the wall. Yeah. I'm like, but no, trouble. And like, so I did that, and then somebody else did it. Like I did one on a Friday and one on a Sunday. And it's crazy because I had never done that in 10 years of broadcasting, and I did it twice in 3 days. So it happens when it rains, it pours, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get into talking a little bit about the Cubs and the organization. Fangraphs just came out with their top prospect lists, and Cubs had 2 of them in the top 100 and 3 more in the top 114, which is good. How exciting is this farm system, and what do we have to look forward to in a couple of years in Chicago? I know, Max, you get to see a little bit more down to lower levels, and we have a lot of young guys down there. Who are some of the guys that really jumped out to you this last season?
Well, one, I think it's going to be thrilling because, so much of the talent the Cubs have been trading for and drafting is just so young right now. There's so many guys that are, 21 and younger. I'm like embarrassed looking at rosters at the end of the season when it's like, this guy was born in 2002. Like, hey, you guys messed up his birthday. Like, nope, he was born in 2002. Like, you're just dead wrong here. But in terms of most impressive, I mean, that we had last year towards the end of last year, I mean, DJ Hers, who won minor league pitcher of the year in the Cubs organization, a guy who was an 8th round pick because, they were worried he might not sign and might go to college, and was actually recruited to play quarterback at North Carolina. So you can tell the athlete there, but yeah, we saw him for a few starts at the end of the year, once at home. And his delivery is so unique. He's got that, Andrew Miller, Josh Hader kind of long lefty who throws from the first base side of the rubber and kind of comes at you from just such a tough angle. Everything's just jumping out of his hand. First high A start, you're like, okay, well, I'm sure he'll hold his own. More than that, just kind of blew us away. But, I mean, when we got Alexander Canario, it was just out of this world. The strikeout numbers started to pile up a little bit, in the last month and a half of the season. But at first, it's crazy how, Alex can probably attest to this. Whenever you get a new player, you can read a ton about him. There's not often a ton of highlights you can immediately go to see, but you can read about all the tools, especially if it's a highly touted guy. There's great write-ups. So when I'm reading about Canario, I'm reading about, hey, he's got all 5 tools. This is how well he does at everything. And then 3 games in, you're like, I've literally seen all of them. Like everything that's been described about this guy in like 3 games, which is tough in baseball when the ball's not always hit to you. You don't have a ton of at-bats.
I feel that way about Brennan. He did it in 3 at-bats.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the first game I did, he had that home run, and it was just like, yeah, you could just tell. It was a pitch. It was a fastball in on his hands that I don't even think he hit that well, and it was impressive that he got to it, let alone turned on it and snuck it out. And it was just, I mean, obviously, so yeah, I saw Brennan for a couple of weeks at the beginning of the year too, which obviously Brennan's just a special talent, but excited to see a lot of these guys coming up. Hopefully this year, we're going to have a ton of talent. Myrtle's going to have just so many young guys that are just absolute studs. I think the Pelicans
part of the system where you look at that. If you want to watch like fun baseball, probably between you guys and Myrtle will be a blast.
Yeah. Well, we had Justin Stone, the hitting director, on our podcast this last week, and he was like, he's there in Mesa right now, and he just said, he's like, when I look at these guys out here playing, I'm looking at South Bend, I'm looking at Myrtle, and there's going to be guys that are going to be fighting for playing time and maybe not getting that bats because there's so many guys backed up at so many positions that we're just stacked up. We got so much talent. He's like, that's a good thing, a good, bad thing to have.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to kind of look forward to. Now, Alex, we got a little bit less, I would say, highly touted besides Brennan Davis at AAA. But not shortage of talent. There, you got to kind of see Christopher Morel come up towards the end of the season. Who else on Iowa Cubs roster do you expect to kind of make big moves this next year?
Yeah, you brought up Morel, and he's a special talent, man. I mean, you want to talk about tools? Watch him run. Watch him take batting practice. Watch that arm. Those are 3 big-time tools. They explode at you. I mean, if he hits batting practice, you see him hit 400-foot shots. The power's there. He made a play at third in St. Paul where he is a above-average defender at third, and he's got the arm. I think he could be a good outfielder. Just with the speed, his athleticism, the way that he carries that, I think that he could be an outfielder. And then they're still trying him at shortstop, so the versatility's there. I really like him. I think he's young. I think he's raw, but sometimes you have those players and you can't put it together. And that's understandable. Baseball's a tough sport. But if he can, you're talking about the highest upside out of any prospect in the Cubs system. Mark my words. I mean, those tools are really impressive. From a pitching perspective, I loved watching Ben Leeper throw. You're talking bulldog mentality, 96 to 98, power slider. He's a guy that obviously had the 2 Tommy Johns, has the injury history, but if he can stay healthy, he's not just a bullpen arm. He's a back end of the bullpen arm. He's got the red hair. He's got the moxie. He gives me such Craig Kimbrell vibes, minus the long hair. But just a great dude, a great clubhouse guy, great with the media. If he can stay healthy, he will be at the back end of your bullpen for 5 to 7 years. He has that type of attitude. He's got a good head on the shoulders, and he's got the stuff.
Leeper's an Oklahoma State guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That red hair just must have been just great with those orange colors.
Oh yeah, it was a sensory overload, right?
Oh yeah, it's always fun to watch. There's so many relievers who people don't really know much about, who then all of a sudden they're just like, oh my god, this guy could be in the MLB next year. Like,
yeah, I mean, and Ben's a guy that everyone's like, oh, he was undrafted. Well, he signed in 2020 when there was a 5-round draft.
When everybody's undrafted. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, he was projected to be around 7 to 10 guy, only because he's not very big and he had the injury history. If he's 2 inches taller and he doesn't have Tommy Johns, he's a 2nd or 3rd round pick. He's making a lot more money. But he was a guy who was so impressive, so lights out, and he has 2 dominant pitches. One other guy who I really liked, who was obviously up in the big leagues at the end of the year, but saw him in his last start with Iowa, Justin Steele. He struck out 9 guys in his last start, and seeing a lefty come at you from that arm angle, kind of a 3/4 arm slot, heck of an athlete, 94 to 96 in the slider, good curveball as well. Once it clicks, and I'm not sure if it's clicked yet. I mean, he had really good big league experience and results, especially out of the bullpen before they transitioned him to being a starter. If it clicks, I mean, he's a 6'4" lefty who can throw 94 or 96. Yeah. Like, the sky's the limit for him. I mean, he was really impressive to me.
He's also a guy, I think, once he figures it all out, can just become a fan favorite, because I know all my friends that are Cubs fans, they loved his, fiery attitude off the mound, big strikeout to end the inning. That guy's going to show the raw emotion that I at least personally hope that we see a lot more from baseball players. I love when we see that.
Yeah, that Dodgers game will stick out when he came in the 9th and got that guy out, and him amped up walking off.
I'd also be remiss to say, just from not top prospect guy, but Nelson Velasquez on an offense last year where, we really struggled throughout a lot of the year, especially after, a few weeks in when we lost a lot of guys to moving up to Double-A. Nelson Velasquez was as reliable as I think any player on any minor league team last year, I should say. He had so much pressure on him because the offense just wasn't doing a whole ton, and he went out every day and just absolutely balled out. People kept talking about how, he's going to have high strikeout numbers, and he went out and just, he proved them wrong. And even when he was striking out, he was still just dropping bombs. And, Alex, you mentioned, certain guys in BP who just look different, like Morel. You go down there, you close your eyes, you watch guys hit. You can probably guess which one's Nelly when he's hitting because it comes off different. And, you look at that guy's got some legs. It looks like he's going to be like an NFL running back with those thighs.
Got the Bo-Jackson
thighs. Yeah, it makes you look at your legs and be like, have I ever squatted ever? Like, did I ever lift a weight and do a leg day once?
Talking about Velasquez, he had an amazing AFL, did amazing in the Arizona Fall League. Do you see him starting the season in Iowa, Alex?
I think he's on the cusp of that. If you look at the Cubs outfielders, it's a lot of depth there. You signed Clint Frazier. You have Michael Hermosillo to a big league deal. You have Brendan out there. You have Donnie Dweez coming back. And then you look at the big leagues, Ian Happ and Jason Hayward. There might not be enough room for a guy like Nelson Velasquez to start in Iowa because you already have Davis. If you're going to give Morel some time in center field, getting Donnie Dweez back from a torn ACL, you look at his 2019 season, he was on the verge of being a big leaguer. There might not be that many at-bats to go around, especially if one of those outfielders that they sign, Hermosillo can't go down to the minor leagues unless he's DFA, but Clint Frazier has options. So if your starting outfield is Clint Frazier, Donnie Dweez, and Brendan Davis, you're not going to have Nelson Velasquez up in AAA just to play every third day. You want somebody like that to get every day at-bats. So I think it'll all even out at some point during the season with injuries and with, the roster moves being the way that they are. I wouldn't be shocked if he's up with Iowa May, June. I'd be shocked if it were in April.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about minor leagues, there's a lot of stuff that's come out with the struggles with the minor leaguers when it comes to housing, pay, food, being brought to light a little bit more. And we've seen a lot of minor leaguers kind of speak out on it. And it's good. It's good that the rest of us get to kind of see that and get a little peek into what's actually going on. What do you guys make of all of it, and what can we do to correct it?
Pay your employees above the poverty line. I don't know that that's such a difficult task, but just the commentary that working in baseball and going to spring training is an apprenticeship, and you don't have to pay because you're basically going to school, but just for baseball. No, you're getting paid to play for an organization that you're making millions and billions of dollars for. Like, I'm not saying that every minor league baseball player has to make the major league minimum of $525,000, but they deserve to be making over the poverty line. So I think there is a very large gray area between there, which minor league baseball salaries should fit into. And where they're at right now is well below that gray area and well below the poverty line. And getting to the point where you have to cram 6 people in a 2-bedroom apartment for 6 months or 6 weeks in spring training and not getting paid to do so, that's unacceptable. So they got to figure out something, but I know that solution isn't working.
Yeah, I agree. I know they're paying for housing this year, but I think one of the crazy things about minor league baseball that makes it so difficult is, it really depends on the organization and the specific minor league affiliate that you're at because the situations are so different. Some teams will have chefs and they'll have people coming in and making healthy food for everybody. And then there's certain teams where you're in more of a food desert. You don't have much money and, you're eating nothing but junk because you don't know when you get to the stadium if it's going to be an edible meal, a healthy meal. There's no good food options after a game ends. So you got to, get food in. There's just so many different things, on top of the, the poverty rate that they're paid. It's insane to think that, these guys are absolutely elite at what they do. They're out there for 6 months and then the off season, so many of them are working side jobs because, they have to be able to afford living, food, they're paying for their own training. There's just all these things that are just, kind of ridiculous on paper to think about.
I will say that, I've worked in a couple different organizations, and the Cubs, when it comes to taking care of their players, housing supplements, having chefs, making sure that they're eating healthy food, their strength and conditioning program, I would say the Cubs are among the best just because they have some more, I won't say money, but they definitely have more resources being a top market team. And I think they genuinely care about their players and their future a little bit more than some other organizations. So I'm not just saying this so I don't get in trouble. I do think the Cubs have a general leg up when it comes to taking care of their players and giving them a healthier opportunity to withstand an entire 140, 150 game season.
And I think a lot of the frustration comes from just the nickel and diming when you compare it to, MLB expenses and what they're paying these guys. Last year, the Oakland A's tried to cut the salary of minor league guys, right? And they were cutting it by like $500 a player per month or something. Talk about in the grand scheme of things when you are paying your payroll hundreds of millions of dollars to be cutting minor league guys, a buck here, a buck there, the guys who really need the money to, not just be able to be at their best on the field, but to, survive and live a happy and healthy life.
Yeah. Now, we were talking about it this last week on our podcast, and I know a lot of minor league parks have been around for a while, but we were kind of throwing around the idea with when it comes to housing. Why, especially like AAA, why aren't these major league teams investing in housing right there on campus or right there at Principal Park? So one, like, they have it all set up. They can have a cook right there. They can, so many players, especially travel back and forth between Chicago and Iowa. Why are they not doing that? In the long run, I feel like it'd be a cost saving measure for them to be able to have everything there. And it shows that you're investing in your product.
It's possible. I think it just depends on city by city. I think that Des Moines around Principal Park, they have a lot of privately owned, apartment complexes and duplexes that they've tried to do that. They just have owners that, this is prime real estate. We're 2 blocks from downtown. We don't want to give that up. Yeah. But just being in the room and seeing the type of housing, recommendations that we're giving the Cubs and those accommodations that are being honored, I think players are going to be in really good positions here to be able to live somewhere where they can walk to the ballpark, where they're not going to have to cram 4 people in a studio apartment, where they will be taken care of. And I think that, our staff in conjunction with the Cubs is working feverishly making that happen. And I think they'll be in a good situation this year. So
good. Do you feel like there's a shift now, like that because it's been brought to light a little bit more, especially this offseason, that there's going to be a shift in the right direction to kind of make things right?
I'm going to make a swimming analogy. We're not diving into the pool, but we're definitely putting a toe in. It's getting there.
It's also, it's a tough thing to be a whistleblower these days, and especially in minor league baseball. And I have a lot of respect for all the minor league players out there who have, not been coy at all about posting their salaries and, just everything like that, posting their housing and living situations. Cause it takes something like that. It takes a lot of eyeballs seeing that kind of situation, seeing a player living out of his car who, is playing in minor league baseball for a pro affiliate. It takes those kind of situations to create change.
Yeah. So with this, what makes minor league games so special? Like, we want them to get paid more. And there is something like our friend Jake, who is on our podcast, was talking about, like, how he became a fan was he went to a minor league game and got to see one of his very first games because it was accessible. One of his nephews, that was how he became a baseball fan. It's like, so what makes minor league games so special that the teams should be investing in?
I think it's the ability to have unique experiences for an affordable rate that you can't get at the big league level. You come to an Iowa Cubs game on Saturday, you can play catch on the field like 30 minutes before the game. That's a huge deal. Like, if I'm an 8-year-old kid, like the 8-year-old kid inside me, being able to play catch with my dad on like a big league or professional field, like, I'd remember that forever. You could do that every Saturday. On Sunday after our games, you can run the bases, like, just to pretend that I'm Ricky Henderson, or like I was a Phillies fan, so Jimmy Rollins or Chase Utley running the bases. Like, you can't do that at a big league park, but you can do that at minor league stadiums. You could pretend that you are your heroes or your idols and go down on the field, and you can do that for, I don't know, $12 a game. So it's an affordable way to create memories. And I think you could do that more at the minor league level than you do at the major league level.
Yeah, just kind of to piggyback that. It's so much more about what is happening off the field, where an MLB game, everybody there is focused on every single pitch and what's happening and who's winning. And you're bummed when the team loses. You're going to remember that later that night. You're going to remember that, a few days later. You go to a minor league game, everyone's just having a blast. And it's really, there's so many little kids there, out in the splash pad, splashing around, running around on the field, who probably have never seen a baseball game or don't really know what's happening or care what's going on. They're playing on the jungle gym. They're just enjoying themselves. It's a place where families can come and anybody of any age can come and just enjoy themselves. And what I think is so important about minor league baseball is minor league baseball teams can actually have their own personality, is something I like to always say. You go to a major league stadium, everything is very serious and it needs to be to maintain that brand. But you go to a minor league stadium, we have an opposing team have a mound visit, catcher and pitcher, and the opposing pitching coach comes out. We're going to be playing the song from The Hangover, and we're the three best friends that anyone could have. You can't do that stuff at the pro level. We just have so much more fun because, we can have that personality. And I think people just really enjoy that, bad call, or we think it's a bad call, play Chewbacca yelling. Just like all those kind of things that just allow us to be our own, allow us to be unique and just kind of different from what you're seeing at an MLB ballpark.
Yeah. I mean, as our podcast, we've really tried to highlight minor league games, and especially being close to Des Moines, get people down to Principal Park, get people excited to be able to take in the action. And it's like you're watching guys that are going to could be future stars, like Brennan Davis. You get to watch him and be close, like a good seat. It's gonna be hard to get seats here in a couple of years to Wrigley Field, and you're gonna be way far away. It's like you get to be right there and get to hear the crack of the bat, like see them play catch and go down before the game and get close and get an autograph possibly. So
also when guys come to rehab, you have the opportunity to be closer to them than you ever would before. I remember when Craig Kimbrell signed with the Cubs and he was rehabbing, but he was getting back into game shape. He was at Principal Park for 7 games, and he was the first person out of the locker room to sign autographs. He was the last person into the locker room to sign autographs. I have never seen somebody like that spend so much time with fans. You're not getting that in Chicago. So you come to a game early in Des Moines and you get an autograph from an 8-time All-Star guy who's going to be a Hall of Fame reliever just because he's down in the minor league. So having that type of accessibility, it's rare, and you don't really get that anywhere else.
It's crazy fun when there's rehabs just to see, the atmosphere in the dugout and pregame is just so different because, we had Rowan Wick who went out there and you could just tell he was a major league pitcher. He's just physically built different and was just dominating hitters out there. But for all those young guys who are at the high A level to watch this guy and just see his work ethic and see, hey, this is what it's going to take day in and day out, and see how focused and locked in this guy was. Every eyeball from every pitcher was watching that guy warm up. There was nobody else on earth except Rowan Wick throwing to our bullpen catcher. It's cool to see guys learn and to see those guys, like you said, Alex, just take advantage of just being so nice to the local fans and treating them some autographs and some face-to-faces.
Talk about Rowan Wick and major leaguers being down in Single A. I remember this year that in the Mets organization, they had DeGrom and Syndergaard in their
Palm Beach Cardinals.
In that A, it just carving people up on back-to-back nights. It's like, I'm sure those low A batters are like, we did not sign up for this back-to-back nights.
Yeah, it actually, the Palm Beach Cardinals, it actually made them have an amazing Twitter account. I'm sure they gained a ton of following last year posting about it, which was a riot.
Yeah. Well, let's get into a little bit about technology. I know that robo umpires are going to be coming to some of the AAA parks. And we saw, college baseball, it's been great because that's the only thing going on right now, that we've got to watch a lot of college baseball, which I really enjoy. But we got to see like Vanderbilt having the little watches to be able to do play calls and do signals. Where do you guys see technology going? And are you a fan with what they've implemented so far, or would you like to see some adjustments? Start with you, Max.
Well, first, from the Vandy situation, I'm totally cool with something like that. It's not giving anybody any kind of advantage besides the catcher and pitcher are immediately going to be on the same page. The whole defense knows what pitch is coming. Hopefully, it can speed things up a little bit and make it so that there's nobody getting crossed up or hurt behind the plate. Not getting any kind of edge. When it comes to robo umps, I think I'm a fan in the long run of, when they really do get it down to a science, because I know people who have been in leagues that have had it, and it just seems like, when they're giving you that 3-dimensional plate, there's just a lot of breaking balls that would have been called balls before that are kind of just sneaking into the electronic strike zone that are causing fits to a ton of hitters. I know one went viral last year. That was that really low and away outside slider that was caught rather poorly, which made it look way more like a ball. That, you know, they had a scientific breakdown of why it was a strike and how it clips the back three-dimensional edge of that corner. Once I get it down to a science, everybody can, you know, kind of figure it out. I'm totally for it. It's just, it's got to be brutal to be rung up by a robot ump on a bad pitch.
Yeah.
Max, what's your cat's name? He was getting in. You got to introduce the cat.
So I actually got this kitten on Monday. So I got this kitten 2 days ago. My who keeps coming in and trying to walk on my laptop. She's never seen me work before. This is Rue. Say hi, Rue.
What's up, Rue?
There you go. Yeah, I keep trying to like make sure she's not hitting stuff, but
that's awesome.
What's your thoughts, Alex?
I actually agree with Max on this. When you're talking about the pitch calls from the watch, how is that different than a quarterback having speakers in his ear, having a play call? It's the same concept. I think that's fine. I mean, but we do talk about stealing signs and having technology to do that. So there is a fine line there, and I think they have to figure that out. But on the surface, I don't see anything different than what they do in football than what they're doing there. So I don't really have a problem with that. When it comes to the robo umpires, I agree with Max that you have that strike zone that, you know, you get that curveball that dips in, hits the corner, but also lands like 3 inches outside. You have a catcher who doesn't frame it correctly, and it looks crazy. But I think there could be some room to grow there. And also, I have a manager, Marty Peavy, who was a catcher and a catcher coordinator and a catching instructor. So to him, there is an art with catching. There is a framing. There is a calling the game aspect. There is some sort of poetry in baseball between pitcher and catcher. And you lose that a little bit when it comes to that poetry being dictated by robots and not a human element. So I think that a lot of the managers in baseball won't like it because half of them are catchers. So I think that from that angle, he has a point. I think that there's things that need to be figured out
on
that direction.
On the romanticism kind of side of like catching, it's also, you know, learning an umpire's zone as the hitter, a hitter later in the lineup who's watching the lineup, you know, throughout the entire first inning or two, trying to get a feel for it. As a pitcher, I get that kind of, you know, sense, but I'd rather have it be accurate than have someone, oh, hey, this zone is a little bit different than, you know, so-and-so zone. But as you could kind of see a lot of GMs and managers maybe being frustrated at it, but you could also see maybe the positive notion. Maybe you have a catcher who isn't good at framing in the MLB, who is not worth a whole lot of framing runs. All of a sudden the strike zone becomes automatic. His value just goes up. Whereas, you know, a player on the other side, like, you know, a Grandal who's amazing, but is like superb at framing the ball behind the plate, maybe a guy like that loses a little bit of value because all of a sudden that's not really a necessary skill.
Yeah. I mean, but if you're going to have robot umpires, like you can't have robot umpires, but then have certain plays that you can't challenge. Like there has to be, you have to be all in on technology, or you can't be in on technology. You can't be like half foot in, half the other. Yeah, you have a robot, but then you can only challenge one play a game. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a fine line that they're going to have to tippy-toe and find what works. And I mean, I'm more with you guys. I would rather not see robo umpires. Just I like kind of the poetry and the beauty of seeing the catcher make the calls, the catcher having to read and figure out the umpire, and especially in the major leagues, those guys get to know those umpires. They know the zones that those umpires typically call. But it's just like the human element of making a mistake. Like, I think that's okay. And that's something that people learn to work through. That's sports. Like in basketball, they're referees. They make calls that can't be challenged, that foul calls. Like that's a judgment call. It's the same thing. Like they're not going to be able to make robo umpire or refs for basketball on foul calls. They just can't do that. So
the other like, I guess, side effect would be, you know, with increased instant replay and with, you know, you add robo umps in, those things go a long way towards diminishing a home field advantage. Because, you know, when you read about why home field advantage exists, it's those big moments, it's those ambiguous calls, it's those borderline strike balls that the social influence of the crowd on you that's loud, you know, subconsciously makes you call something a strike or a ball. And all of a sudden that's gone by the wayside. You know, It used to be a lot of bang calls when you looked at them over time, especially late in games that were important would go more the home team side. Obviously, with instant replay, you can just change those. So you'd be slowly making it towards an actual even playing field at home games.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. I want to thank you guys for jumping on the podcast. Where can they kind of follow you on social media? And one, I wanted to highlight when your guys' first games are. So I have the schedules for the Iowa Cubs in April. I see that you guys start out in Buffalo. That's gonna be cold.
Beautiful.
That's gonna be cold.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Beautiful balmy Buffalo on April 5th.
And then 12th at Principal Park, right?
That's right. 12th at Principal Park. We have 150 games this year, 75 at home, 75 on the road. You can listen to all our games on AM 940. You can listen on MiLB.tv. You can watch it there. Also go on the application on the website. You can find me at Voice of Cohen. You can follow the Iowa Cubs on Twitter at Iowa Cubs. You get to listen to my voice for 150 games. Lucky you.
Oh, open it in Buffalo. I know all eyes in South Bend in our office will be watching that game because we.
You mean watching him shovel 6 inches of snow off the top? It's gonna be.
I'm hoping to watch Josh Allen throw out the first pitch. And what should be, and then you get the Mud Hens at home. You guys might be playing. I believe he is still there. My brother and my sister-in-law's landlord is a AAA pitcher. I was on the Mud Hens last year. I think Logan Short is the name. Ring a bell?
Yeah, he pitched against us last year.
My brother and my sister-in-law's landlord in Arizona.
I will be sure to bring that up on the first marquee broadcast.
Please do. They just moved, so he's not their landlord anymore. But it was pretty funny because last year when we had the alt site, the first game we had finally, game back at Four Winds Field was, the alt site Cubs versus the alt site Tigers. And I got there before we got the rosters. I'm like, hey, is there a Logan Shore on there? They're like, yeah. How'd you know that guy? I'm like, that's my brother's landlord. Honestly, I'd love to meet the guy and just let him know that.
It's like, give my brother cheaper rent, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
And fix the sink.
Yeah. It's been telling you for months.
But we start April 5th, and I know Max's season starts April 8th. So you have 3 days being stuck with us. But yeah, lucky for Max, you get to start at Four Winds Field. So.
Yeah, we get the last year's champion, the first ever High A Central champ versus the South Bend Cubs, who were the last ever Midwest League champ. So should be a fun one there. Royals affiliate versus Cubs affiliate.
And where can they follow you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at Max Thoma, which is my name and which is right there, which is nice. People always say my last name's Thomas and I'm still misspelling it at 26, but it is Thoma. I'm on Instagram. I'm going to go with Max Thoma _PXP. And then, make sure you're following the South Bend Cubs as well. It's great. We got great stuff coming throughout the entire season. So much great content. Posted about content. I think I said contact there. About all of our great theme nights this year. We got Defenders of the Diamond, a couple of Marvel nights. We're going to be wearing Marvel uniforms. Going to have some characters making special appearances. Star Wars night's always a blast. I always look at our schedule. Star Wars night is somehow May the 14th. May the 4th is a great minor league baseball tweet day.
Yeah. Well, thanks for jumping on. We appreciate it. And yeah, go check out minor league baseball. But thanks for joining us on the Dingers podcast.
Thanks, Mitch.
Well, that was Max Thoma and Alex Cohen. Excited to have them on. And we're just excited for minor league baseball to get underway. And so we can kind of watch some baseball. Labor talks are still going on. It is Monday, 9:22, and they are still in meetings trying to get this hammered out. They've met for 12 hours today, which is great. Like they're still in there trying to get a deal done before the end of tonight. Hopefully we have good news tomorrow morning when we wake up. And yeah. Well, that does it for this episode of the Dingers podcast. Hopefully you enjoy. Make sure that you are subscribed to us at our Shy City Sports YouTube channel, as well as following us at Dinger Cubs on Twitter. Join the conversation. Hit us up. We love to communicate with other Cubs fans, as well as subscribe. Make sure you're getting all the podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you subscribed and give us a 5-star rating. We want to hear from you. Give us some feedback and drop a comment. That does it for this episode of the Dingers podcast.